We gave the man who discovered the insecticidal properties of DDT, Paul Mueller, he got a Nobel Prize for it in 1948. Man, we thought that was a great idea. But by the time Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, we knew there were ramifications we couldn't have anticipated, the most amazing being biomagnification. When eagles began to disappear in the United States, scientists tracked it down to the fact that DDT sprayed at low concentrations would be amplified up the food chain. So by the time you get to the fatty glands and the fat tissue in the shell glands of birds and the breasts of women, DDT was concentrated hundreds of thousands of times beyond what we had sprayed it at. By the 1960s, women's breast milk was considered too toxic to feed to babies. We didn't know about biomagnification till eagles began to show what could happen. CFC is the same thing. When scientists began, CFCs were eliminating the ozone layer. I have to admit, I said, what ozone layer? I didn't even know there was an ozone layer up there. Who would have imagined CFCs? CFCs were chosen as to stuff into spray cans because they're chemically inert. They're big ring molecules with lots of chlorine on it, and they're inert. Chlorine is a very reactive element, but for some reason on CFCs, they don't react. So you fill up spray cans of them, they don't react with what you want sprayed, perfume or whatever you're spraying. Who would have imagined that high up above the earth, CFCs would be hit by ultraviolet light, breaking off chlorine-free radicals, which scavenge ozone? Nobody could have anticipated that consequence when we began to use it. And mark my words, the same thing is going to happen with GMOs. We don't know enough to begin to apply these very powerful technologies in the manipulation of the genes of domestic plants and animals. So for me as a scientist, by the early 1970s, who was getting caught up in the environmental movement, this presented a dilemma. We need technology, much of it to solve the problems that we've created with technology in the first place. But since our ignorance is so vast, how could we possibly develop new technologies that wouldn't in turn create more technologies, more difficulties that we hadn't anticipated? And you see it in spades right now. Many scientists are in such desperate concern about the state of the atmosphere, about climate change. They're saying it's too late to do small things like bring in windmills and begin to make our cars more energy efficient. We got to engineer the planet. Geoengineering is about the human arrogance that we have screwed up the atmosphere so bad that we're now going to take over for nature and we're going to engineer the atmosphere so that it doesn't create more catastrophic climate change. The ultimate stupidity from not learning about what the mistakes we've made in the past. But what do we do then? We need and are constantly developing new technologies. And I believe that we've framed the problem the wrong way. And for me, the big change happened in the late 1970s when I became